It is emphatically not the duty of the courts to manage the United States government, to pass judgment on every policy action that the executive branch takes. To make matters worse, the idea that any district judge can demand to see the deliberations of the executive branch will also inevitably have a chilling effect. Subjecting the executive branch to this kind of discovery is not acceptable. It's just not. And we intend to fight it, and we intend to win.
So there's the AG, Jeff Sessions, now laying into what he calls activist judges. Speech last night vowing to fight back all the way, he says, to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary. Jason Chaffetz, former Utah congressman, Fox News contributor on this. And sir, good day to you. You've been a critic of Jeff Sessions. Let's get that in a moment. What's his big point about what judges are doing now on the executive side?
Well, I like that the Attorney General's got some gumption and he's fired up on something. Usually it's related to immigration, and on this particular issue, it's about Wilbur Ross, who's the Commerce Secretary, and why is it that he wants to put a question on the census about people's citizenship. I'm glad to see the Attorney General do this. I think he's 100% right. I just wish he'd be more like that on a whole host of subjects across the board.
Well, here's the headline you filed yesterday. Here it is. Jason Chaffetz says, Attorney General Jeff Sessions needs to go. Here's why Trump needs to show him the door. How come?
I think he's been feckless. I think he's been there in name only. The biggest issue facing the Department of Justice, he's totally absent from. I was particularly concerned when I was the chairman of the Oversight Committee because we had the former IT specialist there at the State Department, Brian Pagliano, refused to show up to Congress twice, issued a subpoena. He didn't show up. U.S. Marshals had served him, but he wouldn't prosecute him. And so now you have a host of people coming before Congress. They get issued a subpoena. They decide, hey, I'm not going to show up. Guess what? Now the precedent is that the Attorney General and the Department of Justice won't prosecute him. And he laid down the marker, and I tell you, it's devastating for Congress to be able to do its job.
So you would argue the contrails of that decision continue today, right? Because Glenn Simpson, who ran Fusion GPS, he's going to be on the Hill today. We expect him to take the fifth. And in your piece, you say Sessions showed zero interest in draining the swamp, and we continue to pay the price. How does that play out now, then?
Well, I was excited when I was the chairman of the Oversight Committee. Suddenly we had a Republican administration that Holder and Lynch, as the attorneys general, were going to be gone. And suddenly we'd get this treasure trove of documents that Congress rightfully had access to, but were denied. But I got to tell you, Jeff Sessions run Department of Justice. I can't tell the difference between what he does and Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder. They withhold the documents. They won't provide the background information to Congress. They won't enforce subpoenas. They won't prosecute people. I can't see the difference. And that is so different than what Donald Trump promised.
Yeah. I apologize for the interruption, but there's a thread that ties to this right now, and that goes back to Carter Page. Carter Page was on last night with Hannity. He's going to file suit against the DNC. You've heard about that, right? Here's how he laid out his case last evening.
Yes.
Goes beyond any damages or any, financial aspects. I mean, there has just been so many lies, as you're alluding to, and you look at the damage it did to our democratic systems and, our institutions of government back in 2016. And I'm just trying to get some justice in terms of getting some disclosure.
So I don't know where Page's case goes, but you've got decisions to make on behalf of Chairman Goodlatte on the Hill. Do you expect them to subpoena all these people in order to get their testimony?
They have been subpoenaing people, but some of them have selectively decided, again, whether or not to show up. What's imperative, though, in order for a John Ratcliffe or a Trey Gowdy or a Mark Meadows and those people, Jim Jordan, to do their jobs, they have to get the documents from the Department of Justice. In that case, there has been an absolute stonewall. There has been redactions that are not warranted. And in the case of Carter Page, it may be that a civil suit can actually get further than Congress can get with the administration. I'm afraid that they're going to, if the Congress and the administration get entangled in the courts, it'll go on for years. Remember Fast and Furious? Yeah. Remember the Department of Justice said they were going to give those documents? The Congress still doesn't have those documents.
What do you think about the Republican leadership in the House then? Because in your piece you say Congress has given up the power to compel them. Have they surrendered that? Have they conceded?
They gave it up in large part back in the 1800s, but then in the 1980s, they did it even worse. They've relied 100% on the Department of Justice to enforce a subpoena. So as a chairman of the Oversight Committee, if I issued a subpoena on the Department of Justice, the way I would enforce that is with the Department of Justice, who says, well, we have total discretion. Guess what? They don't serve subpoenas. They don't necessarily enforce those subpoenas on themselves. That's fundamentally wrong. And until Congress grows a backbone, it's going to continue to be that way.
No wonder you got out. Jason Chaffetz, thank you for your time. We'll see you real soon in person.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, sir.